So our first pricing model was not a good one. And we quickly shifted when we realized that that wasn't working. We did a base price that was much more scalable, much more sustainable, and much better for the client.
It was like profitable since the beginning, or you had to do changes a lot of times to make it?
Yes. So we were profitable every year after we first became profitable. We did hit that in the 3 to 5 year range. So we hit profitability. We started with $500,000. So that was friends and family's investment. And then what we did is once we hit profitability, we took a certain percentage of our profits and put it back into the business. So we did that for the entire life cycle of the company. Other companies look for seed funding or, other rounds of funding. We did not do that. We actually self-funded the entire time, bootstrapped in the beginning and then self-funded. Um, and that gave us full flexibility and full control. So if you can do that, that's great.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Client Engine, the podcast for B2B founders, tech startups, and consultants who want to scale their businesses through consistent and predictable client acquisition systems. I'm your host, Hanish Arora, and on this show, I bring you real world conversations with founders and C level executives or operators who have not only built great products but also cracked the code on growth through systems, strategy, and sustainable execution. Today's episode is a special one, especially if you are in the SaaS space or scaling a service business. I'm joined by Corina Ludwig, a powerhouse operator with over 23 years of experience in leading and scaling FunctionFox, a SaaS company that grew to over 100K users in 120 plus countries before being acquired by Constellation Software. So, Corina served as a president at FunctionFox, helping it grow from a small town startup to a globally recognized SaaS brand. Since then, she has gone on to sports startups in AI-driven land development and now works as a fractional COO at Walls as integrators, helping founders across industries streamline operations, drive sales, build teams that scale. So, in this episode, we'll unpack the key building blocks that helped Corina scale FunctionFox from idea to exit, how to align your team, product marketing, and sales from day one, why most founders get stuck after product market fit and what to do next, and what it really takes to build a company that runs without burning you out. Whether you are just getting started or you are deep in the scaling stage, Corina's story is packed with operational wisdom, leadership insights, and practical advice that you'll want to take notes on. So let's dive in. Thanks so much, Corina. Thank you for joining me on the Client Engine. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate that kind intro.
Thank you. So let's start at the beginning. How did Function Folks come to your life, and what drew to you to stay and grow the company for over 2 decades?
Yeah, so it was a long journey, but it was an excellent one. So I joined FunctionFox when I moved back from New York into Victoria, BC, and it was the right fit at the right time. And when I walked through the front doors, I met some amazing people and thought, this is the place I need to be. And then leadership over the years was an evolution, and I look forward to sharing that story through the questions today.
So after 23 years at Function Fox, leading it from early stage to acquisition, what personal or leadership lessons stood out the most during that journey?
Yeah, so the top leadership lessons I would say is there's three things. Uh, Really, it's people before profits. So focusing on the people, the profits will come from the client. So if you take care of your people, they take care of the clients, and the clients will take care of the revenue. The other thing is really progress over perfection. So I'm a perfectionist by nature, but in a SaaS business, you have to move forward quickly. And so, really taking the time to move forward, even if it's not perfect. So, progress over perfection. And the last one I would say is passion and persistence. So, you have to be passionate about your business and persistent with what you're doing. So, very focused, passionate, persistence, um, progress over perfection, and people before profits.
Great, great. And as the company grows, like what are the key moments when you realize you needed to evolve your team structure or even the leadership style? Like in the early days, I think um, it just the journey is different, right? When it grows, it's different. So what kind of changes you did, and when you realize it's needed now to evolve your team structure?
Yeah, absolutely. So team structure is always very important. And I find that in a business we ran for 23 years until we were acquired, there was three main phases. And I would say the first phase is really getting the finances in order and making sure you have enough runway. So having team members that can do multiple things at the beginning is really important because you don't have necessarily the funds unless you're well funded early on. We did a small investment or got a small investment, so we were a very lean team. So in the beginning, it's all about having the right team members to get that runway going and make sure that you hit your profitability. Once you're profitable, it's about scaling. So it's hiring the right people, the right salespeople to help drive the revenue. And then in the third phase, I would say it's growth for acquisition. So if you're looking to be acquired or you're looking to sell, then it's a different stage of saying, okay, how can we look at profits, top line and bottom line growth, and focus to make sure that the people that you have on your team are the right ones to take through to an acquisition.
Okay. And like in your 23 years of journey, how what was the team size when you guys got acquired?
Yeah, so we at the top end we were about 40, so we had some contractors here and there, so that was the top end. And then when we sold, we strategically let people go or have them not be replaced over the years that we were deciding to sell because we wanted to have really strong financial books. And so we were 13 people, a very strong, stable team, and it was the core people that needed to transition. So very small team, but a really mighty team to transition.
Great, great. And what was the strengths at the max, like during your journey?
Yeah, so 40 at the max. We were about 32 for the most period. And anywhere from over 23 years, it started with about 5 and then went up to 10, and then we'd scale up and down. The salespeople were the most. Development was, because it was a tech company, development was very important. But we utilized people as we needed them and really only hired when it was required. So a strong and stable growth is what we were looking for.
And how did you make sure the right people were in the right seats? And how do you approach hiring and building leadership capacity in the growing SaaS company?
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts with vision, having a really clear vision and really clear core values. And so you will attract the right type of people to your business. It's not necessarily about pay, it's not about skills or experience. It's about finding the right people. And the right people come through when you share what your vision is and where you're going, how quickly you want to get there, and then your core values. So we had some, strong core values. Our core values were heart, which is helpful, excellence, uh, awesome attitude, resourcefulness, and trust. And so we always said, Fox Heart, does this person have Fox Heart? And you want to work with people that you enjoy working with. So people that you can actually relate to, and hiring people that are better than you. So always looking to bring someone on the team that's going to bring something to the team that somebody else doesn't have so that you're growing your team. So for us, it was really important to interview, very slow to interview, and quick to fire. So if people didn't fit the culture, didn't fit the vision or the core values, we quickly help them find an alternate option for them.
Okay, that's great. So you mean uh, being slow at hiring and quick at firing if it's a mismatch, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, great. And about the customer acquisition or the client acquisition, what did your first 100 clients looks like, and how did your client acquisition strategy evolve over time as you scaled?
Yeah, great question. So, client acquisition, in the beginning, it's really important to get your first clients, obviously. So, we started with friends and family, putting a beta test out to friends and family, and then finding people that were in our industry. So, it was a creative industry, creative niche. And so, we were putting out to advertising agencies, marketing companies, other design creation companies, and found that the ones that were, very similar to us, we had an agency ourselves, were the right type of client fit. And then what we did is we listened to what they really needed. So client pain points is where you have the opportunity to solve. And so what we did is we said, okay, here's our product offering. How could we make it better? They would come back and say, well, here's a challenge I'm having. And then we would modify the product to help them solve that challenge or help them solve that problem. So in the first 100 customers, which we celebrated when we had that first 100th customer, we did a big celebration, but really it was finding the people that aligned with the product and aligned with our values and what we were offering.
Okay, and how many years, uh, like you guys had to spend to get your first 100 customers?
Yeah, good question. I think we were 2 years in, which was slow if you look at it now, right? Um, but typically you don't become profitable until you're between years 3 and 5. So it's a real struggle in the beginning to sort of build your product. I believe now, 20 years later, decades later, things are much quicker than they were at that time. Internet was just coming out, right? So if you think about, there was no AI tools, there was barely internet. We were doing things on dial-up. People weren't even doing online banking yet. So, when I say a couple of years, that's actually a short period if you look back 20 years ago. But now these days, I would say it should be much quicker.
And you started your journey with FunctionFox in 2000, right? And it the company got acquired in 2023. So, as it as a SaaS company, if you can tell the viewers a little bit about FunctionFox, what the SaaS tool was, and who was the right, like the ideal customer for the product. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So FunctionFox was an online time tracking, or is still valid today. I'm just no longer with them, but time tracking for creative companies. So time tracking, project management, really tracking your clients, tracking your projects, your personnel, and then all the way through to billing. So creative companies would come in, track their time, bill that back to their clients, and use our product, a SaaS product, to do that. So really time tracking, project management space. When we started, there was very few, less than a handful of companies that were in our space. And 20 years later, there were thousands. So really staying competitive. And in terms of the ideal client profile, it was creative companies that were looking to grow their business through their billings. And so what we did was we took that information and said, okay, rather than trying to be everything for everyone, we're going to be very niche focused. And the more niche focused we were, the better we did. So very controlled in terms of client creative companies.
Got it, got it. And what was some of the marketing or sales strategies that worked surprisingly well? And how did you align both functions, sales and marketing, for long-term growth? Like,
Yeah, so sales and marketing is really important to align together. I've seen companies, where sales is its own department, marketing is its own department. They really have to work hand in hand. So one of the things that we did very successfully, I believe, is really align those two departments and made them into one. So marketing fed sales, sales fed marketing. In fact, sales team members came up with some of the best marketing strategies because they knew how to sell. So that we figured out, what are the pain points? How do we communicate what our value is and what our offering is in a way that resonated with creative folks? And so we did things that were very creative to try and get that. Our number one driver for client acquisitions was referrals. And that's hard in the early days, but really important in the long run. So most companies, if they're doing well, their number one client acquisition is referrals. And we found that that was very strong for us as well.
okay, great. And other than referrals, like about inbound and outbound, which were giving you the best results?
That fluctuated over the years. So there were some years where inbound was a real driver. We were doing outbound, client-facing things. We're going to conferences, trade shows, we're doing speaking engagements, and we found we got a lot of inbound from those. Other times we were doing, more outbound, cold calling. And cold calling is, it's a lost art. It's something that people don't want, but we found that our strategy was actually really good. So we had a lot of outbound salespeople calling. on the phone, making appointments, doing product demonstrations, and we found that we had very high close ratio on that. And then the other key strategy that we use that worked very well is we actually teamed up with one of our competitors. So someone in the space that was larger than us, that had clients that were of a higher level, higher revenue, and we said, okay, we have a product that's really good for small creative companies. We will pass to you any large ones that don't fit us, and they did the same with us.
They did the same with you. Yeah.
So they gave us a lot of small clients, and it was a great partnership. So we did a lot of revenue through that and very successfully, teamed up with your competitors, which is a strategy I think most companies wouldn't consider.
Right. Doing strategic partnerships with your competitors rather than uh, trying to tap into their market, trying to do a strategic partnership would be more worth it. Okay, and how did you balance between customer feedback with your product roadmap, and what helped you decide which features to build or what to say no to?
Yeah, great question. And that's always a tough one, right? You want to drive products that will generate revenue. So, customer churn, making sure that customers aren't leaving. So, you need to have the right products and the right features that customers don't leave. And you need to have the balance of building the right products that customers will buy. And those are always very subjective until you have them. So, what we found is we looked at our client base, and when you're very niche focused, you can do that. And of course, we had customers from other disciplines, but we focused on what is our core offering to the core creative group? What do they need? And if 80% of our core group needed it, it's something that we would build. Yes, we'd put in features, here and there for one-offs that would be generating revenue. But really, when we were looking at the roadmap and deciding what to build, we always looked at what is 80% of our customer base going to utilize. That's where we focused.
Okay. Getting the first customer feedback and trying to go with the ones where the require where you find 80% of the customers require that feature right in the product. Got it. Yeah. It's a good strategy. And retention is critical, like in the SaaS especially. And what systems or approaches helped you ensure customers stayed and found value long term?
Yeah, so systems and processes, we obviously used our own product. So it was a time tracking project management product. We used it for ourselves, right? Eat your own dog food. Um, One, because it made us have a better product because we were utilizing it every day and everyone was providing input on the team. And also, it was better because we were able to help our customers. We knew our product inside and out and what the stumbling blocks were and what worked, what didn't work in terms of reporting. And then other systems that we used a one-page strategic plan. So having a really clear map, literally one page of what's your vision, what's your mission, what are your core values, your 1-year goal, your 10-year goal, everything in terms of what's your promise and how are you going to get there. So having quarterly rocks, aligning yourself to that rocks, looking sure to make sure that the team was following the KPIs and delivering on a quarterly and monthly basis. That really helps solidify our group. So today, using EOS, using a one-page strategic plan, there's lots of products out there that do that. But if you can find something where you're all on the same page, literally on the same page, and moving forward to common goals, that is something that I would recommend for SaaS companies today.
Yes, I think yeah, one place strategic plan that aligns your team as well as your customers, like they can also get clear picture of the vision, mission of the company. Yeah. And uh,
Exactly.
in your experience, what was the biggest financial mistakes founder make early on, and how did you handle pricing and profitability as you scale?
Yeah, that's a big question. So in the early days, we decided to price our product in tiers. So this was long before lots of pricing models and strategies had come out. And we said, okay, if you're this size, it's going to be this price. If it's, this size, it's going to be this price. So we had 3 tiers. And we found that it didn't really work. So our first pricing model was not a good one. And we quickly shifted when we realized that that wasn't working. We did a base price per user and then a per user cost. And we found that that was much more scalable, much more sustainable, and much better for the client clients that we had on the sort of roadmap. And so when you're pricing your product, you want to look at your competition. We didn't have competition at the time when we first started and we were pricing, so it was really hard to see, what is everybody else doing. But you want to align yourself in a place that's not just price sensitive, but what are your other key values? So if you're a price driven company, fine, but what else are you delivering that people are going to see the value in? So, great customer service, great product. Are you doing something that's really unique in the marketplace? All of those will help with your pricing strategies. And these days, there's lots of pricing companies that can help you with that. Pricing is really important, so you want to make sure that you get it right.
Got it. So you have a base price and then per user price, right?
Correct.
It was like profitable since the beginning, or you had to do changes a lot of times to make it.
Yes. So we were profitable every year after we first became profitable. We did hit that in the 3 to 5 year range. So we hit profitability. We started with $500,000. So that was friends and family's investment. And then what we did is once we hit profitability, we took a certain percentage of our profits and put it back into the business. So we did that for the entire life cycle of the company. Other companies look for seed funding or, other rounds of funding. We did not do that. We actually self-funded the entire time, bootstrapped in the beginning and then self-funded. Um, and that gave us full flexibility and full control. So if you can do that, that's great. Um, we found that we were profitable every single year, some years more than others, of course. COVID, even during COVID, we were profitable in that years or those years as well. So I think we did really strong, stable growth. Other companies have different growth strategies. They go very for quick growth, large injections, quick growth. So you have to really be aligned on your leadership team and the vision of the company. Are you looking for strong, stable growth, and how are you going to grow versus, quick jumps and large cash injections? So you have to be aligned on that to make sure that it works for the entire team.
Got it. Got it. And what was the process of selling FunctionFox? And what did you learn about preparing a business for acquisition? I think you must be having that vision for few years, right? Okay, we want to sell the company in 2 3 years, right? So how was that journey?
Yeah, so selling a company I had been through before, but not in the same capacity. So I was at on the leadership team as the president of the company, running those meetings. So we looked at our company, and it was slightly after COVID, and we said, this is a time where there's a lot of other players in the marketplace, and we would have needed a large cash injection to really do it well. The majority of the leadership team was at a place where we were looking at retirement or looking at what's next. And so we said, this is the right time to sell for us, for our business. And to really take it to the next level, we thought it needs new leadership. So we were, valid enough in ourselves to kind of say, this is the next stage. We've hit a plateau. And to get to that next plateau, we believe that we need more cash, a different marketing strategy, and a different leadership team. And so we recognize that in ourselves. The lessons learned, the biggest lesson that I can share is when you start a company, you want to plan for exit. Whether you're going to exit or not, but you want to be in a position where you're lining up all your books, you're putting things in place, you're documenting from day one how the business is running. There's documentation in every department so that when it comes time to sell and they ask literally hundreds of questions, that you have answer for all of those. Now, we were a very well-organized team, and so we had all of those things. But they would ask questions that were 17 or 20 years ago about an employee, and we had to go find those files. We needed signatures for every employee contract. Those are table stakes and things that you absolutely need. So being very methodical and very diligent in how you run your business is equally important when you're trying to sell it.
It's thinking about system processes from day one, and trying to run the company in the structured manner, right? If and having an exit plan from the start, like when and how you want to exit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And how did you know it was the right time to step away after the acquisition? Like, and what was the transition like for you personally and professionally?
Yeah, good question. So during the acquisition process, I honestly was undecided whether I would stay or go. I had a deep affinity to stay with the team and make sure that the team was well situated with the new company. So I made the commitment to stay a minimum of 3 months, really make sure that that transition was a seamless transition and do the best that I could. Attended all the meetings, went through with the new owners sort of what the process was. They have a playbook of certain things that they're going to do and looked at that and said, is this a fit for me professionally and is it a fit for me personally? From the professional standpoint, there was things that they wanted to do that I agreed with to grow the business, but that might have been challenging for me to actually agree with from a personal standpoint. And a true leader knows when the next leader should step in to take it to the next level. So we knew that when we were ready to sell that we didn't necessarily have the right leadership team to take it to scale to the next level. So we recognized that. And then from a personal standpoint, I was making that decision and I was headhunted to work in another business. And I just thought this is the right time. It's the right time for the business. It's the right time for me. I had hit some milestones in my career. I had seen it from concept all the way through to acquisition. And what was on the table for the next 5, 10, 15 years, I thought I'd rather do something else and still continue to learn and grow in a different space. So I made that choice and don't regret
Good.
it.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And at what function you joined in the early days?
Yeah. So you mean when we first started in 2000, what was
Mm,
my function at that point?
Right, right,
Yeah.
right,
So
right.
when I first started, it was just an idea. It was like, hey, can we build something for the
Okay.
creative agency that we built? We didn't set out to build a multi-million-dollar company around the world. We actually set out to build a product for us, for our agency. And we found that it was so good for us that other people should try it too. So I was hired on as really to help build a product for the company. And
Got
then it turned into, hey, this is actually really good. This is something that we should sell to others. So my early title, there was no title when I first started. It was just, hey, you're hired with the company, and there wasn't a lot of structure. And then when we decided that we were going to look for some funding, which was that 500,000, we put titles to people so that there was some structure and hierarchy
yeah.
and an org
So
chart.
you was part of the founding team, I think, right?
Yes, yeah, I was there from day one, actually, even before the company started. And my first title was VP of Operations. That moved into President and ended up, really running the company on a day-to-day basis, working with the founder of the company, the board, and the other leadership team members.
Great, great. It was like a very powerful journey. 23 years in one SaaS company. I spent 7 years in one company, so I can like just imagine how the 23-year journey would look like. It's a very long time. Yeah.
I never expected to be 23 years in one company. The longest I had ever been in another company was a year and a half prior to that. And I always said to myself, I will stay as long as I'm happy and I'm learning every day. And I did right to the very end. And I was still happy at the end. So, it was a great, great success and a great career.
Yeah. I think like after a year or two, it's not the money. Like it's something else that drives you to come to office every day, on the same office at least.
Yeah, no, it was in office and, it definitely wasn't about the money, at least in the early days for sure. Later on, sure, there was dividends and, that was rewarding, but there was more to it than that. There was the team and what the product that we were building, the customers that we were helping, the value that we were creating for, thriving creative companies around the world.
And as a fractional CEO now, like working with multiple industries, what common scaling challenges do you see across different businesses now?
Yeah, so they all have the same, honestly. People is always at the top, right? There's always people challenges. Do you have the right people in the right seats? Vision is really important. Where is the company going? How are you going to get there? How fast or slow do you want to grow? So that's always a common challenge. Getting traction in the marketplace. So, having the right product, having the right process for what you're doing. Are you using a one-page strategic plan? Are you using EOS or another tool to help you? And really working through the issues that your company has. So if you're a part of EOS, there's 6 sort of key components, and you'll see that in every company. They change, in terms of where you want the priority, but I always find that people is at the top of the list typically, and those are where the biggest areas of opportunity are.
Okay, great. And what advice you have for SaaS or startup founders today? What's one overlooked piece of advice you find yourself repeating often for others?
Yeah, I would say that it's going back to those three key principles. So it's people before profits. I found if you want a profit-driven company, then that's what you got to do. But you need to be aligned with your people on whether it's people before profits or profits before people, because there's a lot of challenges there. And then really it's progress over perfection. In a SaaS business, you need to move quickly. And so you can't be a perfectionist. You have to move things through at 80% done and then work on them as you go. So, I wasn't ready to release the website early days because it wasn't perfect. Get it up there, make it happen, and then modify it from there. And then just be passionate every day about what you're doing. Understand the why of what you're doing, right? The Simon Sinek of why are you doing what you're doing? And have real passion for that, and be persistent, keep it going every day. So, continue on that vision and you'll get there.
Yeah. I think progress is better than the perfection. Like you have to make the progress on daily basis. Version one is better than version none. Yeah. And you have also worked on now AI driven land development, right? And how do you see emerging technologies, AI reshaping how SaaS or tech startups operate today?
Yeah, the things that you can do today that you couldn't even imagine 20 years ago. And so, like I said, we were doing product demonstrations on dial-up. So, give that a second of thought, because going from that to what you can do now in terms of getting things done and doing a whole marketing strategy or a whole brief or a pricing strategy, all of those things you can do at the touch of your fingertips. Those can take weeks or months or even longer 20 years ago. So, you have to be able to utilize the tools. You have to use what's capable or what you're capable of these days, hiring the right people, hiring the people to do the work and still creatively think about how you want to move forward. But yeah, as our career transitioned and as I worked for another AI company, you use the tools as best you can. There was things that we wanted to do in the early days that we couldn't because the hardware wasn't there yet, the software wasn't there yet.
Right.
Technically, we weren't able to do what we wanted to do, and now, I mean, it's unlimited, honestly, and so you need to be in that space to understand that in order to grow.
Yes, yes. We have to leverage the technology around us. A lot of solutions that's already built, right? We just need to leverage all of them into our day to day to solve our day to day problems in the business, right? And if you had to leave our listeners, especially the SaaS or IT founders, with just three core principles to build a scalable business, what would those be?
I would go back to those 3, but in addition to those, I would say, hire the right people, hire people that are better than yourselves. Focus on the KPIs, be really specific about what are the right KPIs, don't have too many, and make sure you're tracking those always so that you have the right budget and the right runway. Companies are doing great, but if they run out of cash, they're in a real dire strait. So KPIs and financial goals are really important. And then stay niche focused. Be who you are, be true to yourself, and be very specific about the niche that you're going into and where you are. Everybody tries to be everything for everybody. There's so many players in the marketplace. The more streamlined and the more specific you can be, the better you will be, or the better you will do, because your marketing strategy will be more sound. Your sales team will be more aligned. Your marketing will be more aligned. The vision of the company is more straightforward. So I would say those are the top things that I would focus on. Obviously, there's always other things depending on what stage of growth you're at, but having the right people, the right vision, the right process in place, working through issues, having open and honest conversations, being very niche focused, all of those things are things that I would sit down with a SaaS founder today and say, these are the things that you need to work on or make sure that are in the right space.
So it's people, KPIs that we are tracking, like to track on daily basis the goals, monthly, week, quarterly goals, and also at the end, it's the niche focus, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. That's great, Corina. And so that's a wrap for today's episode of the Client Engine. And I hope you got as much value out of this conversation as I did. A huge thanks to you, Corina, for sharing your incredible journey from scaling FunctionFox to over 100K users to advising startups now as a fractional COO. And your story is a masterclass in sustainable growth, strong leadership, and what it really takes to build a company that lasts, right? So, if you are listening right now and thinking, I want to build something like that too, and I'm not sure where to start, so I have got something for you. My team at Exoto and I'm personally offering a free one-to-one strategy session where we'll review your current client acquisition system and give you clear, personalized feedback on what's working, what's missing, and exactly what you need to start building your own client engine. So you can grab a slot from the link in the description or displaying somewhere on the screen. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the client engine, share it with a fellow founder or consultant friend, leave us a quick review. It really helps the podcast reach more people and bring on more amazing guests like Corina. And thanks again for tuning in. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks, Corina. And
Thanks so much. It was great being
thank
on the show. Really appreciate your time and hope your listeners got a lot of insights out of